Welcome back to TelehealthFX Talk. I'm so glad you're here today because we need to talk about something that just happened literally yesterday. And if you're on a GLP-1 medication or you've been thinking about starting one, this is going to affect you directly. The FDA just proposed a major change to how compounded weight loss medications can be made and sold in the United States. And before we get into the details, if you're already thinking about your options, go ahead and check out go.telehealthfx.com/start. That's where you can take a free 2-minute qualification quiz to see if you're eligible for Semaglutide or Tirzepatide through a fully licensed clinical program. No hidden fees, no membership charges. Just go to go.telehealthfx.com/start, and we'll have that link for you throughout this episode.
Yeah, this is huge. And I want to say right off the bat, there's already so much confusion online about what this actually means. People are panicking, they're reading headlines that say compounded semaglutide is banned, and that's not exactly what's happening. So let's break this down in a way that actually makes sense.
Exactly. Let's start with what actually happened. On April 30th, 2026, which was literally yesterday, the FDA put out a proposal to exclude 3 specific medications from something called the 503B bulks list. Those 3 medications are semaglutide, tirzepatide, and liraglutide. So basically the 3 big GLP-1 weight loss medications.
And for people who don't know what the 503B bulks list is, let me explain this really quickly because it matters. There are 2 types of compounding pharmacies in the US. You've got 503A pharmacies, which are your traditional compounding pharmacies. They make custom medications for individual patients based on a specific prescription from a doctor. Then you've got 503B facilities, which are these larger scale outsourcing operations that can produce big batches of compounded medications, sometimes without even having individual prescriptions.
Right, and that's the key distinction here. The FDA's proposal is specifically targeting those 503B outsourcing facilities. They're saying these large-scale operations can no longer use bulk semaglutide, tirzepatide, or liraglutide to compound medications. And their reasoning is pretty straightforward. They're saying there's no demonstrated clinical need for these facilities to make copies of drugs that are already commercially available and no longer in shortage.
And that's an important point. Remember back in 2023 and 2024, there was a massive national shortage of semaglutide. Ozempic and Wegovy were incredibly hard to find. During that time, compounding pharmacies were legally allowed to step in and produce these medications because patients needed access. But the FDA declared that shortage resolved back in February of 2025.
So the temporary exemption that allowed mass compounding, that window closed. And since then, the FDA has been ramping up enforcement. In March of this year, they sent out warning letters to a bunch of telehealth companies and pharmacies that were still selling what the FDA called illegal or misbranded compounded GLP-1 products.
Which brings us to yesterday's announcement. This proposal is basically the FDA putting a permanent stamp on it. They're saying we're formally excluding these ingredients from the 503B list, which means even if conditions change, outsourcing facilities won't be able to just start compounding these drugs again without a new shortage declaration.
Now, here's what I really want people to understand, because this is where the confusion is. This does not mean all compounding of GLP-1 medications is illegal. 503A pharmacies, those traditional compounding pharmacies, they can still prepare patient-specific medications in certain narrow clinical situations. For example, if you have a documented allergy to an inactive ingredient in the brand name version of Wegovy or Zepbound, a 503A pharmacy can still compound a version for you based on your doctor's prescription.
That's such an important clarification. The mass production pipeline is what's being shut down, not the ability to get a truly customized medication when there's a legitimate medical reason for it. And honestly, from a safety standpoint, there are good reasons for this. The FDA has documented cases of compounded medications arriving with dosing errors, improper storage, medications showing up warm when they need to be refrigerated, and sometimes containing unknown ingredients.
Which is exactly why working with a legitimate, fully compliant platform matters more right now than ever before. And I want to bring up TelehealthFX again here, because this is the kind of situation they were built for. They work with licensed U.S. compounding pharmacies that operate within the current legal framework. Every prescription goes through a 24-hour provider review by a real licensed clinician, not a chatbot, not an algorithm, an actual medical professional. They've got transparent pricing with no hidden membership fees, one-on-one onboarding support, and your medication ships via 2-day UPS. If you're sitting here wondering what to do next, go to TelehealthFX.com. That's TelehealthFX.com, and see what your options are. They're licensed in all 50 states, and they offer Semaglutide, Tirzepatide, NAD+, and Sermorelin.
And I think that's what people need to look for right now, because here's the reality. Millions of people started compounded semaglutide during the shortage era, and now a lot of them are looking around going, okay, what do I do? Is my medication still legal? Where do I go from here? And the answer is you need to work with a platform that operates within the current legal framework and is transparent about how they do things.
100%. And I want to talk about what your actual options are going forward, because there's more available than people realize. First, brand name medications like Wegovy and Zepbound are now much more accessible than they were during the shortage. The manufacturers have rolled out direct pay programs that have brought costs down significantly for people paying out of pocket.
That's true. And for people with commercial insurance, there are manufacturer savings cards that can reduce costs dramatically. The landscape has really changed from 2 years ago when you literally could not find these medications on pharmacy shelves. Supply has stabilized, and both Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly are actively competing on price now, which is actually good for consumers.
And then you've got compliant telehealth platforms like TelehealthFX that cut through all the confusion and make the whole process simple and straightforward. No guessing about whether your source is legitimate, no surprise fees showing up on your credit card.
And that's huge, because one of the biggest complaints I hear from people is about these weight loss platforms that charge you a subscription fee of $100 or more per month on top of what you're paying for the medication itself. It's like you're paying for the privilege of being their customer. TelehealthFX doesn't do that. Their pricing is transparent, you see what you're paying for, and they're licensed in all 50 states.
So let me summarize what's actually happening here and what you should be thinking about. The FDA's proposal is specifically targeting large-scale 503B compounding of semaglutide, tirzepatide, and liraglutide. Traditional 503A compounding for patient-specific prescriptions with documented clinical need is still legal. Brand name medications are more available and more affordable than they were during the shortage, and compliant telehealth platforms like TelehealthFX are providing legitimate access with real clinical oversight.
And I want to add one more thing. The public comment period on this FDA proposal is open until June 29th of this year, so the rule isn't finalized yet. But regardless of where this lands, the direction is clear. The FDA is moving toward tighter regulation of compounded GLP-1 medications, and consumers need to be working with platforms that are already operating within those guardrails.
Could not agree more. And look, if you're listening to this and you're feeling overwhelmed or confused about what to do next, here's the simplest step you can take right now. Go to go.telehealthfx.com/start. Take the free qualification quiz. It takes about 2 minutes. You'll find out if you're eligible for semaglutide or tirzepatide through a legitimate, fully licensed program with transparent pricing, one-on-one onboarding support, and 2-day UPS shipping. That's go.telehealthfx.com/start. Or you can visit the main site at telehealthfx.com. That's TelehealthFX.com. And as always, we want to remind you that everything we discuss on TelehealthFX Talk is for educational purposes. We are not providing medical advice. Please consult with your healthcare provider before starting, stopping, or switching any medication. Individual results vary, and what works for one person may not be the right approach for another. Thanks for tuning in. This is one of those episodes where we really wanted to get the information out fast because the news just broke and we know people have questions. Share this with anyone you know who's on a GLP-1 medication or considering one. Knowledge is power, especially when the rules are changing. We'll see you next time on TelehealthFX Talk.